Hello. So today we are going to be talking about the lack of funding in the United States. So we're going to be talking about a few different lacks of it in different states, and then lastly we're going to talk about it in Michigan, which is quite surprising. So in 1970, Congress passed IDEA, which stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Act. And when Congress passed IDEA, they promised to pay 40% of additional costs for special education, whether that be materials, technology, certain things like that. Years later, Congress has only paid a whopping 14.5% of what they promised. So a very big decrease of what they said that they would pay. And with that number slowly decreasing, children with special needs is slowly increasing. So as you have the funding for special education slowly decreasing and lowering, you have children with disabilities increasing and growing, which is not a very great mix. And this is creating a harder, more challenging education system for them to learn in. Obviously, you have a lack of funding, but you have a lot more children with disabilities that need this funding for help in the future. So Congress has yet to pay for what they promised, leaving children with special needs harder, more difficult time learning for their school districts. So from 2008 to 2014, the cost of special education funding in Wisconsin dropped nearly 19%. Because of this cut, students with disabilities struggled more than ever because of the lack of funding, making it harder to grow bigger classrooms, to do more one-on-one time with students, to make sure that everyone is understanding and learning and comprehending what the student is teaching or what the teacher is teaching, and being able to have more staff on board. All of those things affect the funding. So the funding is a huge issue for not only the students, but for the school district itself. You can't grow classrooms, you can't do one-on-one working with your students, and you can't have a bigger staff because nobody can pay for it. Students with disabilities are struggling more than ever with simple problems like being able to read, write, simple things like that. And that's because of all those three things. Students can't get one-on-one time with teachers anymore because of the lack of the funding. There isn't more staff to be able to do one-on-one time with a student who's not understanding, and that's a very, very big issue. So because there isn't enough funding to help these students, it's a big struggle with obviously the students, but also teachers. So not only are the students hurting, but the teachers are. So a behavioral teacher in Kansas, so a teacher that a teacher that deals with children with emotional problems, behavioral issues, things like that. He struggled severely last year because he could not afford his materials that he needed for lesson plans because his hours got cut severely because his school couldn't afford to pay him. And that all leads into this funding that schools aren't getting. And with this, you have a teacher that has gone to school, is excited to teach these students with behavioral issues, and he's very excited to start his career with making these great lesson plans to help these children and everything. And he can't because his hours got cut because the funding of special education is so low. So he can't even make a lesson plan to help these children because he can't afford the materials to buy them. So this isn't even just teachers in general, this is also assistant teachers. So a few assistant teachers in Kansas actually said that their lack of funding hurt them so bad that they were only allowed 5 hours a week to be able to help and assist these teachers in the special education room. So you're in this big classroom with children with disabilities that obviously need more extra care and more attention, and you can't get it because your assistant isn't there to help you, which is a very big issue. So in Michigan alone, the underfunding for special education is $700 million. And because of this, Michigan is a top struggler for special education. Obviously, you are not getting $700 million of what you should be getting because of the lack of funding. So in Flint, the federal government is willing to pay 10% of the special education funding, leaving the rest of the 90% for the school district to figure out how to get it, which baffles me. They only will accommodate and say that they will pay 10% of the special education funding and then leave the rest for anyone else to figure out what to do with. So In conclusion, Congress has yet to pay for what they promised, and because of this, students with disabilities and students in general and teachers are struggling severely. And if and when Congress decides to pay the full 40% that they promise, students in the future, our future, will increase and grow from this